lose this debate because you have violated a norm that we think
I
is
think
good.
it's a good norm,
This
but while
also does not
coronavirus is
resolve-
spreading, you don't sit in a room with your partner.
All right, this
Like,
has
we can
literally
both
nothing
discuss
to
what
do.
norms are.
Dude, this
The
is
judge
this
votes
now that
on
was
in
personal.
rounds.
Now that was personal, right?
That wasn't
Drew's
personal.
internet is out,
No,
and he
that
lives
was a
down the
bad
street,
health decision
and he's 6
right
feet
there.
away from me, dog. If you really want to have this debate, we can settle this at a place that is not TOC round 6, right?
Calm down.
We would say none of this
Why are
solves
you
any of our standards as to why disclosure is a good norm. Can I get a question?
Sure.
Okay, can you explain the internal link into your impact on your first warrant, on your first intention?
Oh, do you want to take that out?
Of which one?
Your first contention.
Oh,
Okay.
you could take flex prep for it though if you want, man.
I mean,
No,
you
no,
can
no.
just
I can
answer the
answer it if he
question.
wants. Are you talking
Yeah,
about
I'd prefer
subpoint A
that.
or subpoint B?
Huh? No, they said he'll answer. He said he'll answer it. Which subpoint? The top, like just the internal link to your impact.
Okay, yeah. So right now, Congress has no executive authority on court precedent in regarding executive war powers. If you affirm and you do fiat, which happens through all three branches of the government definitionally, you then establish a precedent for congressional oversight. I tell you, congressional oversight is good. It forces things like deliberation and prevents things like the Iraq War, where
That's
the
what- we're out of time.
executive can simply do whatever they want.
Can we see that piece of evidence? The congressional oversight
I
card?
sent it to you.
You sent
I
it
sent
to
you
us?
like I sent as many of the broad cards as possible for the subpoint A. I can just send you what other card did you want for subpoint A? Because I think I just sent you all the cards I can see. Yeah.
Okay, why don't
Yeah,
you just
that's in the Fleischman evidence and in the Alder evidence.
okay. We're gonna run prep. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was just pulling up what parts. Starting prep now.
Alec, you want to call?
Yeah.
Do you want to call me or should I call you?
No, just call me.
Okay.
We use 30 seconds. Drew's microphone is not working. We are reading 2 more off case positions.
Yeah, now it's working.
Now it is working.
2 more off.
Can you give me a second to get some paper?
Yep. Where is it?
We're chilling.
Whoever said they needed paper, are they good now?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay, everyone has paper. They're all good. So 2 more off, disclosure, their case. Okay, we all good? A is the interpretation. Debaters should read quotes from cut cards, not paraphrase evidence. Violation, they paraphrase. C, standards, academic integrity. Paraphrasing can distort the author intent and lead to misrepresentation, which is unethical and undermines education. B, or second is information processing. Paraphrase encourages lazy research practices and surface level reading of articles instead of rigorous processing through to make it a cut card. That discourages education and incentivizes poor research development. Prep theft, or third is prep theft. Paraphrasing makes it impossible to check back against evidence abuse and search for warrants because you must process entire articles or large portions of them instead of targeted warrants and vote them down for undermining fairness in education. Fourth is judge intervention. Not providing the judge with exact words leads to argue interpretation and distortion that judges can read paraphrase evidence in a way that goes farther than a student's analysis. D is the voters. First is education. They undermine the core benefits of debate and actively promote a system that prevents educational impact established through standards outlined above. Second is fairness. They have misrepresented and misconstrued evidence, giving them unfair advantage to do and say whatever they want. This also gives them an unfair prep advantage. If we win paraphrasing is a good practice, then you should drop them to encourage the practice. Theory is a prior question, but if case that has them paraphrase the concept of debate would have been different. Default to competing interpretations. Next off, email chain theory. Interpretation. Teams should send the evidence they're going to read in the next speech before they give the speech. Violation. They didn't. C is the standards. First, it allows us to, or it gives them an unfair advantage because we sent them all their evidence before our speech happened. Second, it's good for education because we can read for sort of during the evidence during the debates, which means we don't have to waste valuable prep time on reading their evidence and calling for it. C is that it's good during a virtual tournament because it can lead to, it prevent delays from happening because they had to take them 5 minutes to pull up a card that actually would have meant that the tournament gets delayed and allows more rounds to begin. And as a good, D is the voters. First is education. They undermine the core benefits of debate and act with a pro system that has the educational impact established through the standards above. Second is fairness. They have made it unfair because we have to call for all their evidence and waste prep time on it when they had it during the speech. It gives them an unfair advantage. If we win that. Yeah, I know. I'm not reading any. Like all the evidence, I'm obviously not reading any new evidence. In the case, first at the top, fiat. We agree. It's all three branches. They're probably going to be an extinction outweighs argument. One, you should obviously, arguments can have a 0 probability or be happening right now, which means their arguments are about extinction are not true. Second, it's a bad norm. It ignores ongoing structural violence that's happening right now. Obviously, if violence is happening right now, you should probably reject that violence. Third, it leads to policy paralysis because we're always fair of a 0.01% chance of extinction. That's always going to happen. Every impact, we would pass nothing because every sort of policy can have that sort of effect. Their first warrant's about congressional oversight. One, removing nearly all presidents definitely doesn't solve this because their argument is that like Trump having troops in the region doesn't lead to this. Definitely having troops in the region means that congressional doesn't have oversight. Second, a lot of thumpers. Trump breaks the sort of Congress rules all the time and has a lot of other arguments that happen. Also, arms sales, not military presence against the War Powers Act. That means all of their impacts should have been happening right now, which means they have to talk about. Third, no card. I a card that says Persian Gulf. None of them say it. It definitely doesn't make any sense that we talk about international law. One, it's extremely non-unique. Trump breaks international law all the time. He's broken out of things like climate treaties, all these other rights. Then another problem, no warrants or explanation for why it's key to international law broadly. Just because we sign on to a treaty doesn't mean other countries are going to follow. I realize I messed up my order. Go to disclosure real quick. That's my bad. One, our interpretation is teams should do it over the course of the season. They have not done it over the course of the season. They do not meet. There are obvious benefits of disclosing all the evidence that you have over the year. It's about debating whether those benefits are good and bad. It's a good interpretation. Also, I think there is a time skew issue. They did not really respond to this well, other than me. I don't think they should get new responses in the next final focus because that means they could just go 4 minutes on this when we had none of it. It creates a prep skew. They also conceded to that argument.
Hey, you want to send those theory shows over the email?
One of them was not written.
Is that the email chain one?
The email chain was not written, yes.
Okay. Also, do you have any cards for how it ignores structural violence?
No cards.
Policy paralysis?
No
No?
cards. No.
Okay. Jackson, do you want to take prep time?
Aren't you about it? I mean, that's your call. We can take our time if you want.
No, I think I'll be fine.
Okay.
Everyone ready? It's gonna go the offs one by one.
Do you want me to just send the paraphrase or not?
I'll be fine. It's gonna be
Okay.
first the disclosure one, then the paraphrasing one, then the email chain one. Everyone ready? Okay.
Wait, what is the order of the cases after that? Or are you not?
Oh,
doing
after
it?
that, I'm just gonna go my case, their case really quick.
Okay, cool.
Everyone ready? Okay. Article disclosure. They say it's over the course of the season. No, it's not. They're literally blatantly lying. Go to their shell. The first 2 words is at TOC. Don't let them shift around what their interpretation is. That's hella abusive. At that point, they could just run one shell. We can say we meet, and then they break it and change it and then switch it around halfway through the debate, which makes it impossible to track what the arguments are. And it's literally an independent reason to drop them. Look at the interpretation they sent. It's not over the course of the season. It's if we break over the course of the season. Jackson and I are breaking you all the time. Literally at Georgetown, we ran 8 cases. And then they say there's a time skew, no time skew here. Then go over to paraphrasing. Off the top, 3 general responses. Well, first of all, 80% of public 14s paraphrase, and we were taught to do so. Forcing a change kills accessibility. The argument is super silly. Move on to this later. Second, they violate. Some of the cards are bracketed, which means they could be misconstrued, or people could also clip cards. You could just find one card that says something else and clip it. Third, we meet. All our rhetoric could technically be bracketed in our cards, which means there's no bright line for what constitutes a complete paraphrase. But then counter interpretation. Teams must paraphrase. Standards. First is accessibility. Not everyone knows how to cut cards. Forcing everyone to read off of cut cards pushes people out of debate. Second is portable skills. Synthesizing ideas is super important in college and in life. Regarding all arguments is not as just something that you regurgitate, doesn't actually develop your ability to focus on arguments and understand arguments. Second is rhetoric skills, like speaking off or just reading off of cards takes the entirety of persuasion out of debate. It eliminates the ability that debaters have to like functionally try and understand what they're saying. And third is like literally accessibility for individuals like myself. I didn't grow up speaking English. I grew up speaking Spanish. I paraphrase helps me learn the language. If they want me to just be a bot reading off of something and not actually integrate myself within the sphere, that's super abusive. This links into education and fairness. Then go to their thing on email chain, or actually then go down each of their standards. First, academic integrity. They say paraphrasing distorts author's intent. You can miscut cards. Then they say information processing. We cut all of our cards, which co-ops this. This standard is not dependent on reading off the cards. And they say prep that. This argument literally makes no sense. We can just send them all of the cards. Also, even if we were going to check if they were saying what on their card says is true, we still need to call their cards and check it, which means there is no prep test. And there's also no judge intervention because in the back half of the debate, we're going to have to paraphrase the evidence anyways. And then at that point, it doesn't even matter. Go to their argument about sending an email chain. First of all, we would have if they asked. There's no reason we didn't there's no reason that people should be dropped for this argument. Second of all, we will send whatever evidence they want to them. They just need to actually explicitly ask for it. Then go to specifically on their standards. First, they say evidence check. No, because if they're going to be checking the evidence as we're reading it, they then can't follow along or think of responses, which means the time skew argument flips either way. Then they say they don't waste prep time. They didn't waste prep time. They looked at our cards during cross. Also, we'd argue that if they tried checking all our cards during our speech and they're never actually going to get to any substantive argument or think of responses, they're just going to have to then take prep time to come up with the responses instead of reading the card in the first place. And then they say it prevents delays on the tourney. Like there's always going to be a million reasons that tournaments get delayed. This tournament is literally on time. There's no reason to drop us for this. Also, it would take longer if I had to get together all of our cards and give all of those to all of them. They don't give a reason that we have to give counter interpretations. We say we don't have to give counter interpretations in systems in which we're not trying to set a norm. Go to our case, buy their D-links, doesn't matter. Go over to their case. Okay. Start off with an overview. Ocean 20 explains that if the US backed out, a multitude of other actors like India, Japan, China, and in Russia would all fill in because they care about the economy more than security agreements. They would establish economic linkages with countries, force them to come together and resolve mediating conflicts. Then on Israel, this doesn't happen for 6 reasons. First, Israel doesn't want to get between the US and Iran. Second, the prime minister has always held out of the option of a unilateral strike to prevent Iran from doing so. Third, it's a particularly bad time now. Israel's in a deep political stalemate. Fourth, intelligence officers believe the probability of Iranian attack is extremely low. Fifth, Israel has indicated that their future moves will be defensive, not because of the US. And sixth, they're pretty confident and claim that most Iranian soldiers would simply go back in confidence. Then on their second contention about proxy conflicts, we literally solve all of it because Lang 19 explains that the reason Iran is emboldened is because the United States supports one side of the conflict, that A, emboldens Saudi Arabia, and B, emboldens Iranian hardliners, pushing both of them in a perpetual Sunni versus Shia war. If the US backs out, they can all cooperate, leaving Bonnie conclude that even a minimal US military presence would force regional cooperation, which solves back for their harms.
Okay, I'll take a
Cross?
breath.
15 seconds. We took 15 seconds there.
Okay, do you want the first
Okay.
question or should I take it? Do
My bad. You completely cut out. What'd you say?
you want the first question?
Yeah, I'd love the first question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So, like persuasion. I read a card in rebuttal. Like, do I still have to be persuasive in Final Focus, not reading cards?
Hmm?
So, like, let's say we read cards in rebuttal instead of reading paraphrased evidence. Why does that mean I don't have to be persuasive in final focus?
Are you paraphrasing in final focus?
No, we're not reading cards, new cards in final focus.
But you're still explaining what the cards say in a paraphrased manner, right?
Well, the first time you read it, that's when you're
I
like,
don't-
reading quotes.
I really don't care about the first time. I can mishear you and I can be focusing on something else. Or in your own words, according to your shell on which off was it? I'm sorry, you read a lot. On the sending email chain stuff, you're not actually listening to the persuasion, you're just reading along on a document, right? So
Well,
how do I
mean,
know
it
that
might
what you
help.
say at the
I'm
end
not
of
just
it?
reading off along the document. It just may help.
Okay.
You can have a
So
question.
are you
You can
yeah,
have a question.
are you paraphrasing in the back half when you re-explain evidence?
Well, I don't think re-explaining violates our interest, but that's fine.
No, I'm not about it violating your interp or not violating it. I just want you to answer the question. Are you paraphrasing when you re-explain evidence in the back half?
I mean, I don't know what Tyler's doing. When I do in final focus, it depends. If we go for theory, I probably won't be reading new evidence. You know.
No, it's not about reading new evidence. When you re-explain evidence, like extend blank card, do you read off of the document as well, or do you paraphrase it?
I mean, I think that's re-explaining. It's not like paraphrasing, right?
What does the
Because we're-
third card in your contention one say?
Do you want me to read it to you?
No, I just want you to tell me.
Well, I mean, I
Or
think I
you-
can give you a summary of it if that's what
Yeah,
you would
can you
like.
do that?
Sure. A summary of the card that we read is that basically Israel, and this is coming from me, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Taking what
We
the
can all
author
read.
says, but we, huh?
I'm joking. I'm making a paraphrasing joke. You can go ahead.
No, I mean, I'll
Alec,
read
that
it.
was hilarious, by the way.
I didn't even hear what he said.
I'll love you, Tyler. I mean, no, like I'll cut straight to the point.
Sure.
Any question I ask you in cross on a substantive argument, you are technically going to be paraphrasing what your author says. If this wasn't a theory round and Jackson and I read everything off of cards, any question I could ask you right now, you would have to paraphrase what some author says. So should we just completely disregard anything that happens on substance in the back half?
So, like,
because
wait, no,
not
no.
all of us are going to be rereading off of a computer screen.
I think we believe that when evidence is like first read, when you are reading evidence, like that's when you should not paraphrase. But in the background,
Why?
you're not reading evidence.
No. I'm aware of what you're saying and I'm aware of what your interp is. I'm asking why
I
that
just think
matters.
that's what I don't think no. We're not going to read down cut cards in the back, but that's not when we are reading evidence. It's when we are extending evidence. There's different
That's
things.
my argument. When you are extending evidence, you still need to give the exact explanation of what the card says. So I'm honestly just confused here. How come you re-explaining it in the back half is going to be so fundamentally different from you saying it in the first half that it changes the structure of how debate works? That makes
What?
literally no sense.
Nah, because it's like when you send us your cards that are paraphrasing, like you sent me like a book, man. Like I have to look through that for like 30 seconds in order to fully understand it. But that's time.
Huh?
We're running prep starting now.
Can we see the fill-in evidence, Ocean in 20? Thank you.
It's not its name, but we can get it for you.
I'm sorry.
You're chilling.
Wait, which card?
The fill-in card.
Here, I got it. Yeah, I sent it.
Let me make sure I get it. Haven't got, okay, I think I just got it. Let me pull it up. Okay, take prep now. Thirty seconds left.
30 seconds of prep left. The order. I know this round has been very confusing, so I'm gonna try and make this less confusing, but I will probably fail. The order will go disclosure, paraphrasing, their case, our case. Really quick on their case.
Oh wait, we're gonna take a little bit more prep. Give the reasons you know for no RBIs at the top of your head.
It's fine. We can just get back to it later. It's not a big deal.
How would you pass?
7, 2, 3, 1. All right, everyone good? That was 5 seconds. Theory. We're taking a little more time. All right, that was an additional 6 seconds, which leaves us with 19.5 remaining. We can round to 20. Everyone good? Okay. Huh? Yeah, you're good. Okay. They have said that we have shifted our interpretation very clearly. We said that debaters at the TOC should disclose throughout the entire course of the season. We clarified that in first crossfire. Even if the wording of the interpretation was clear, we clarified it and made it very clear for them. This is their only response to disclosure. Also solves literally none of our standards. We would still say that disclosure is good for argument transparency because 20 minutes before the round is simply not enough. Valley is an incredible debate team. Their disclosure would be very good for the entire community and create more transparent arguments. That is what Drew and I have done the entire season. Ultimately, the 20 minutes, they're probably just going to end up taking it down just like they did at the straight round robin, which means there's no offense on this. I mean, they get no offense. But on the reciprocity argument, we would say that we have disclosed on every topic this year and 30 minutes before this round, which means we have met our own interpretation and a reciprocity agreement was failed by them. They have also Teams processing evidence is obviously a good thing because it leads to more critical education and educational attainment. Reading evidence would be good because smaller schools can learn about it also. Pretty unfair for them to disclose 20 minutes before the round. But the biggest thing is they haven't extended any reason why theory comes first, or they haven't read any reverse voting issues. But if they do try and read some reverse voting issues, I have some arguments to respond to that. You shouldn't win because you're fair. Theory is a limits test to see if my opponents fall under the rules of debate. Proving that your argument is illegitimate is not sufficient for the ballot. Second, RBIs decrease the ability to check back abuse. RBIs discourage people from running theory, even if it is real round abuse. So the basics you need to understand here is they have not read any reverse voting issues. So none of the theory debate that they have read, the counter-interp on the paraphrasing stuff matters because they haven't said why there's a reason we should lose. Their literal link into impacts is that it's fair. The only words he said was fairness in education. This is obviously not an extension of an argument. No linkage to the impacts. Also, not on reverse voting issues. We're not going for email chain. They have kicked their case. It is effectively conceded. You can extend all the delinks in terminal defense into summary. Don't let them respond in second summary. It's really unfair and creates a time skew for Drew and first final focus on our case. They would run response on our argument about proxy conflicts, which we would say comes first at the point where there hasn't been any argument made as to why the theoretical debate comes first or any RBIs made from the affirmative. They laid this laying evidence that says U.S. support leads to emboldenment. A couple of reasons it doesn't. First, it's about Iran, not about Saudi Arabia. Our Goldenberg evidence empirically finds that when the United States is in the region, it does the opposite of leads to emboldenment. But when the U.S. pulled out, Saudi Arabia expanded into Kuwait, into Qatar, and into Syria, which proves the notion that military presence is key to keep Saudi Arabia at bay. 3 uncontested empirical examples. But also, this was not true with Saudi Arabia, and they try and say diplomacy fails. But Murmy in 2020 finds that diplomacy is actually happening right now between the GCC and Iran, which means that there's only a risk that mediation is going to be solved for. They have conceded our entire Iran warrant, where we say that, Oh, answer the fill-in argument. They say fill-in. China's a really bad actor. They're harvesting Muslim, like Uyghur Muslims. There's also no impact to why fill-in is good or bad. No expectations. The evidence that says they're going to pick sides never says they're actually going to fill in with troops. They have also conceded our Saudi Arabia stuff. The Blanchard evidence goes cold conceded that Saudi Arabia is currently high ties with the United States right now. And the McInnes evidence says that they're aggressive without. And if Saudi Arabia gets aggressive, that's going to lead to proxy wars per our passionate eye evidence. Millions of people will die. Uncontested offense. Vote there.
Okay, I'm calling Alec.
Let me pull up my phone.
We'll start time once the call goes there. Start time now. That was 1 minute and 47 seconds.
Jackson, how much time do you have left? I'm sorry.
So I believe we used 33 previously.
I got
So-
you at 1:10 previously.
Oh.
Maybe I'm crazy, Drew. I don't know. I remember like a minute, like before constructive or something, to prep for the first off case position for disclosure. It was 1:10.
Okay. We're out of prep then.
Fair. We're out of prep too, I think.
I'm confident.
Wait, are we out of prep? Oh, we have 20 seconds left. Oh, I was generous. That's right. I rounded. Okay. I was like 19.5 to 20. Sorry. You're good.
Nice. Okay. So the order is just going to be on disclosure. Then it's going down their case. Is anybody not ready? Time will start now. Let's make this incredibly clear. Go to their interpretation. It is very specific when it talks about debaters at the TOC. It does not make any overarching claims about past performances that aren't directly at the TOC. When you look to the actions we took at the TOC, we disclose. That means we don't bite their interpretation, and they're not setting any better form of debate simply because we didn't disclose 10 minutes earlier than they would have liked to. This isn't a voting issue. You should be voting today. Also, they make the claim that we're just going to like take down what we disclose. Bold of him to assume that. We just won't take it down. With that, let's go to case. Let's start an overview and fill in. We explained to you that once the US pulls out of the region, it's going to cause a bunch of our allies, such as Japan, Russia, and China, to fill into the Persian Gulf once the US decreases their hegemony there. The only response they make is that China filling in would be problematic because they have problematic domestic issues. Like domestically, they oppress Muslims. This doesn't interact with our argument at all. What Alec tells you in rebuttal is that the fill-in involves economic investment. That is how they are filling in through their hegemony. It doesn't matter what China does internally, insofar as they are increasing their leverage by increasing their economic expand in the region. So insofar as they don't read anything to contest with that link, let's look at how that affects their contention too on proxy conflict. If China, Japan, and Russia, and a bunch of other actors all have a vested region in ensuring that no conflict develops, because that's inherently would be problematic for their investments, that means we're not going to be seeing any of their impacts go. That means we're not going to be seeing Iran be more aggressive because their biggest partner, who's going to increase their most amount of investment, is going to probably tell them that's not the best idea. That solves any Iranian aggression or Saudi Arabian aggression that they want to go for. With that, let's go into the other piece of evidence that Alec reads in his rebuttal, and that would be a Lang, which explains that the reason Iranian hardliners, the people that are at the forefront of Iranian policy and are causing destabilization, are emboldened is because of US military presence in specific. That means that once we remove our military presence, they're not going to have a political platform that they can campaign on, and thus aren't going to hold prominence in the Iranian political system. That means Iran is not going to be a destabilizing actor after the United States pulls out of the region, thus short-circuiting all of their impacts. Anything else, Alec?
I guess just like also extend the other part of the turn on Saudi. Like,
which term?
never mind. We don't really need anything else.
I mean, we've got a little bit of time in summer.
I guess just do Wing, like econ, risk of poverty prevention. The rest is non-unique.
Insofar as we're the only one that creates economic stability in the region through the investment, that's a very high probability impact, because we've been seeing empirically when China increased their investment through things like the BRI, proves their economy pulls people out of poverty. Prefer that over any like very low probability argument they make about some war risk coming out, which is always going to be checked because everyone has economic interdependence and doesn't want to fight war with people that you're profiting off of.
Okay. Drew is eager to ask first question. I'm going to allow him to do so.
Okay.
Good partner dynamics.
Yeah. He's so nice. Okay, let's start prep. Can you explain the Iran turn to me just real quick?
So
Sure, I'll tell you almost, if you want to tell me almost word for word what I said in rebuttal. So the United States has a double system where we embolden our allies and embolden our enemies. We scare Iran into doubling down on deterrence and adopting militarism strategies.
Oh, that's the turn?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Well, I also said like a part of Saudi, but like that became irrelevant.
Sure. And then you can have a question now.
Okay, so if Iran calms down, what incentive does Saudi have to be violent? Like, why can't they just peacefully expand at that point?
Because they don't trust that Iran will come down, and so that means they'll strike first.
And this is also empirically
Okay.
proven by the Goldenberg evidence that gives Drew, you need to mute your mic. There's so much echo.
Empirically not been like, hasn't had their hardliners at the forefront of their policy.
I'm sorry,
Like-
Jackson. I don't know you. Can you repeat that? My bad.
So you just said empirically, we've seen Saudi Arabia be aggressive when Iran
Yeah.
Is choosing to pursue like diplomacy.
No. That's not the argument. I can reiterate if you'd like. The argument is that when there is a lapse of military presence from the United States, Saudi Arabia sees that as an opportunity to intervene in other civilian conflicts. And it has nothing to like, honestly, bro, like it doesn't have to do with Iran. Like it could be literally any conflict. We've given 3 examples, right? About how Saudi Arabia just does bad stuff. It's like the civil war in Yemen. I'm assuming we know about that, right? It's-
Okay, so how do we do a comparative considering both of your links impacted to the same impact? Like there's a drop turn on one link. You guys got the other link.
What
How do we
turn
do a
did you-
comparative?
what turn did we drop?
Iranian
first?
emboldenment.
We responded to that.
You did.
No.
Jackson
You
just said I
extended
did.
your argument.
Jackson
No,
just said I
I
did.
said you didn't. But why? Like if
Oh.
you'd like to.
But I did. And I can tell you how I did it if you'd like to hear
Yeah,
it.
go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Alec. I appreciate that. 3 things. One, we've made the claim that has gone uncontested that diplomacy with Iran is happening now. So clearly, U.S. military presence does not embolden Iran at the point where literally, post Soleimani, they are sitting their asses at a negotiating table. Second, doesn't have to do with Saudi Arabia.
Better.
Third, proxy wars, the Goldenberg evidence.
So 2 of them are an extension of your other link, and the other one doesn't contest our link, right?
So
No, the diplomacy is an
Definitely is.
extension that contests
Diplomacy?
it. And fits the
No,
argument.
diplomacy is proof that something's good right now. It's not proof that it can't get better.
see, this would have been great analysis in a speech, but I think second final focus is going to be too late.
I mean, I'm giving you it now. Also, it's not anything new. I'm just saying things could get better than they are right now. I think that applies
Yeah,
to
I think at the
anything in
point where
existence.
there are meeting in terms of diplomacy right now, probably better than the alternative, which we don't know what it is. That's
I mean, we
kinda
just
where
tell you the alternative is
All
no
right.
need for diplomacy in the first
One
place.
is a world in which like the Yemen conflict doesn't exist.
Yeah, like diplomacy is a way you end wars. Our argument is
Okay.
you don't have the war in the first place. That's
Okay,
why
yeah.
Jackson said it's short
Diplomacy
circuits.
is how you end wars. That makes sense. Okay. Are we out of time?
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, Drew and I have 29.5 seconds remaining of prep. Sorry, 19.5. I sincerely apologize. I misspoke. We're going to use that time right now.
Okay, everyone good?
Got me, Drew? Pick sides.
Yeah. So it's gonna be disclosure, then our case. Everyone good? Okay. Disclosure. Yes, our interpretation says at the TOC, but the end says over the course of the entire year, which means they don't miss it. Which means our argument is that TOC teams should do it over the course of the year. Also, like this has been the interpretation. If they didn't understand it, they could have asked us in cross. We made it clear in first cross. They can't make any new responses to this, which means it's good for this team to disclose all of their evidence throughout the years for uncontested reasons that education is good when they actually process this information with the cards that are on the wiki. Pretty easy place to vote. It outweighs any of the case arguments, and they can't win on it outweighs any of the case arguments because it's key to education throughout this debate. Other than this debate round, academic or information processing is good. That's conceded. It's a portable skill that education is. Nothing we get from this case happens, but if we can encourage them to disclose throughout the entire year, that's a portable skill they get. They also can't win on this argument because they have no RVIs. Go to our case. First, card at the top on fill-in does not say fill-in. It says they'll pick size, which means it's none of these arguments make any sense specifically. But our evidence specifically tells you that Saudi Arabia feels that they need the military troops from the United States, which means if they're right about economic security, they obviously don't win this because our argument says specifically they need troops. That was in the argument. Also, China fill-in is like obviously bad, even if other allies come in. China's coming in as an independent reason to vote for us. Then they have this Iran turn, but our memory evidence says that diplomacy is happening right now, and this is the only way to actually get diplomacy because we need to pressure it, which means even if it can't get better, it's inherently worse in their world because there is no diplomacy. What? Memory evidence was post-Soleimani, but they've also dropped all of the Saudi Arabia offense that says they feel that when they lose the U.S. ally security guarantee, they have to go to conflict first. They are going to say that the Iran turn short circuits it. It doesn't because because Saudi Arabia doesn't trust Iran. They conceded historical examples. Bahrain, Qatar, and Syria. Saudi Arabia all did this, which means this Iran turn doesn't short circuit this. Also, no contextualization other than short circuiting on the turn. We have given you reasons the turn doesn't make sense, and that in the past precedent this happened. They have no examples, no past precedent, no impact.
Okay. It's going to
Say
go
economic doesn't matter.
disclosure shell. And then it's going to go case debate. Is everyone ready? Okay. This round is literally the definition of a team squirrelily running frivolous theory, disclosure theory, on a team that literally disclosed. I'm going to read off their interpretation. At the TOC, teams should disclose arguments they've previously read with evidence if they're not breaking new over the course of the season. They just added two different parts at the TOC and over the course of the season, and they just shifted which one they're going for depending on how we responded to the show, which is the crux of what we've been saying. We disclosed, we met what they wanted to, and now they're coming up here and saying that, oh, we also needed to do it for all of our past topics. That literally makes no sense. We can't go back in time. Also, they don't extend drop the debater. The only thing that they extend is drop us so then we do it in other rounds. We're literally seniors. I don't know what they want us to do next year. Also, they literally cold drop what Jackson says in summary, which is that since we disclosed on this topic, there's not going to be any norm setting if you drop us. Picking us up endorses the same disclosure values as theirs because the most recent example of what VIPBL is doing is disclosing. I really don't know what they want. They're just trying to use this to win the round. Go over to the case debate. On the overview, The single thing that they extended is that they pick sides and Saudi Arabia feels that they need troops. There's no interaction with the warranting. And you can also call the Ulrishton evidence. Yes, they don't use troops, but China, Russia, India, Japan, and a multitude of others come in. They establish economic linkages, and they use those economic linkages to leverage nations into cooperation and mediation. All of their Saudi Arabia examples are not about when the U.S. backed out. It's when the U.S. left for a tiny little bit. They drop all the comparative analysis that the overview takes out 100% of their offense because A, it gets rid of the people Saudi Arabia is attacking, which short circuits it. B, the mediation brings Saudi Arabia to the table. And C, the only other risk of offense in this round is maybe a few people get pulled out of poverty. Also, they just cold concede the analysis that even if diplomacy is happening right now, it could be better. The only reason Iran is aggressive is a pursuit of militarism in response to the US. We literally solve every piece of their case.
Alrighty, that was an interesting debate.
That was a very interesting debate.
That was pretty heat.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick.
Do y'all want me to wait for Alec to get back?
He's messaging me on Facebook right now, so I think he's near. Near, hiding. Oh, there he is.
Okay. I affirmed. And okay, so the reason is because I don't think that you can go for both theory and case at the same time, because clearly, like, your theory isn't that important if you can still win on the substance level. I think that's pretty abusive to go for both. Even policy debaters don't do that. Plus, in your voters, and I really looked, you didn't tell me what to do if you won disclosure theory. Like, sure, I do believe that disclosure is probably a good thing, but there's no, like, drop the debater, or, like, do I just be sad about it? Or, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, there's nothing telling me what I'm obligated to do as a judge. It's just, like, there and it exists. So I don't really evaluate it, and I'm glad that I don't have to. So I go to your case, and you don't extend your impact. And both teams are really blippy, and I'm assuming that's because there's 4 other pages of flows, that's why you can't get that deep on this one piece of flow. But both teams are really blippy, so I'm really tempted to just presume neg, but I'm a little upset. And so I end up buying like this sort of risk of solvency on like economic investment, China, Russia fill-in. And that's how I vote.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
This was a very heated round. I think at some parts, and I apologize if I came off as a angry or like rude person. I did
Oh
not-
yeah, we weren't trying to be rude or anything. Like nothing against you
Yeah,
guys or
when I made
anything.
the social distancing joke, I
Nah,
wasn't trying to offend anyone. I was making a joke that y'all in a room
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, we were not trying to do that, but like my internet just doesn't function like with this. It like completely cuts out a bunch. Like it's
Dude, you're
yeah, it's really
balling. Don't worry.
bad. All right,
This
good
was
luck, guys.
fun. Good luck,
Yeah.
y'all.
Great round, y'all. Thank you so much for judging.
Thank you for judging.
Good luck.